times a year. I've been a Kendal member for about 5 years, and I'm an artist. It's a career I found my way to unexpectedly. I started out in journalism and then switched to PR for nonprofits. Sorry. I consulted for interesting clients for a long time until I discovered the joys of creating with clay in the 1970s and started down a whole new career path. Even then, I arrived at what I've been doing since 2004 by a pretty circuitous route. But that's enough about me. What I'm mostly going to be talking about in my presentation today, hold on a minute. What's happening?
1 second, I'm sorry.
That's too far advanced. That's way, way too far.
Forgive me, friends, technical difficulties for 1 moment. My apologies.
Why haven't we got that? That's way down the end of the thing. There we are. Apparently. No, that's not right. That's what, yeah, okay. We'll be back in a minute. Oh, brother. All right, what I'm mostly going to be talking about in my presentation today is my artwork, how I make it, and what I think it's about. At the end of the presentation, we've left time for questions. I hope my talk will prompt a lot of them. Getting people's feedback and responding to what they want to know about my art is the most fun part of this for me. The genre I work in is digitally altered photography, especially digital montage, which I call imagiscapes. The digital part is self-explanatory. I work with a PC and a software graphics program. The particular one I use is PaintShop Pro 8. My computer and my program view my source materials and my finished artwork as a huge collection of pixels, which I can alter, move, and combine in large or small groups and in myriad ways to produce an entirely new whole, which I then tweak and tweak and tweak some more before I print it with an inkjet printer. Sometimes the process involves adding as well as altering pixels. Here's a striking example of that. The only surviving photograph of my mother as a child was this flood-damaged fragment rescued from my aunt's basement. Most of my grandmother is missing. I didn't have a single picture of her at that age. What I did have were photographs of her at my mother's wedding, a formal portrait of her at 16, and a few photos of her daughters as young adults. I recreated my approximation of the missing parts using those sources and my own imagination. In essence, I was painting with pixels. To create the complex digital montages I call imagiscapes, I blend or meld several of my manipulated digitized images, which I then tinker with some more. That restored photo that you just saw is a central element in one of my favorite imagiscapes, Remembrance of Things Past. Let's deconstruct it. I made the altered photograph as a gift for my mom. After her death, I wanted to do something different with it, something that would express my sense of family continuity. So I combined it with an image of me photographing myself with my parents' antique clock in the background. Took a lot more recombining and tweaking to get a balance between the images that looked right to me. The finished composite still felt incomplete. I wanted more texture and detail in it. I scanned an antique beaded bag. It didn't happen. Wait a minute. Anyway, I scanned an antique beaded bag that belonged to my grandmother. And then I also, okay, we're getting there. The gold locket that my parents gave me when my first child was born was the first edition. Well, I'm sorry, was the final edition. I resized and transferred it a few pixels at a time with my mouse to a separate layer so I could control its exact position and transparency. Before it was sold, Remembrance of Things Past took top awards in 2 juried shows. a special award for photography in Visions 2006, and first place in the digital professional category in Focus 2007, original photography exhibition, co-sponsored by 3 art centers. The jurors for that one included the Cleveland Museum of Art's chief photographer and head of its Department of Photographic and Digital Imaging. Where is the picture? There it is. I'm sorry. Anyway, that was very validating. Folks are often surprised to learn what my medium is because I don't approach my high-tech medium from a high-tech perspective. I work intuitively, mostly by trial and error. The joy of discovery and the opportunity to dialogue with my image as it evolves are what keep me motivated. What keep me riveted. Also, being self-taught, I find my own pathways. Taking the road less traveled does make a difference to how my art comes out. Before I go deeper into how I actually make the art, a few observations may be helpful. Look closely at Hong Kong impressions. I bet you couldn't guess what gives this montage its vibrancy. It's my shot of a tank of lobsters, one of whom I held on a dare. Where'd it go? Oh dear, thank you. One of whom I held on a dare and another of whom I ate for lunch. It was delicious. Does it enhance your experience of the artwork to know that? Your appreciation of my artistry, maybe, but of the artwork itself, probably not. So does it matter that those lobsters are there? I think so. The source images have associations and resonances for me. They affect my thoughts and feelings as I make the art. Their melding gives the new whole its complexity, texture, and visual surprises. But each finished composite is meant to stand on its own, to speak to your imagination as a viewer, as it also does to mine. You'll probably have noticed already that there's a good deal of stylistic variety in my work. My art definitely has more in common with a searchlight than with a laser. I think it's fun to be able to recognize an artist's style at 20 paces, but I've never been interested in limiting myself to a consistent style. Part of what keeps the process fresh for me is the opportunity to explore and experiment without stylistic constraints. So that's what I do. I believe art is at least as much about the head and the heart as it is about the skill of the hand. What binds my work together, we'll be with you in a minute. There it is. You got it?
Almost.
What binds my work together, aside from the medium, is that each, you need one more. Is that each finished image is a product of my sensibilities, of my intellectual interests, my emotional responses, and the gazillion aesthetic choices I make as the piece evolves. That's the bit that usually surprises people. Go on to the next slide. Now it's true, the computer program.
My apologies, friends. Our PowerPoint is not syncing up appropriately in this moment. So give me one moment, please. Another technical difficulty seem to be starting our day today, my friends.
Okay. You got it. To get it to do what you're doing, you need to click the star. All right, let's go with it. Now, it's true the computer program lets me make radical changes in my artwork with a few keystrokes. And it's certainly true that I could not make this art without the magic of computers and graphic software. But the process I use to create an Imagiscape, we're on the wrong slide, is anything but automatic or quick. What people who haven't tried it rarely realize is that making nuanced art on a computer. So next slide, Carol. Making nuanced art on a computer entails literally hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of small discrete steps, Each requires me to compare options and decide before the work can proceed. I work on each image over many sessions. My program keeps track of the progress of an image from the time I open the file till I close out that particular session. It counts the steps. The count astounds me. The number is always in the hundreds, and most steps represent not one, but a group of decisions. The other number that astounds me is the count of how many individual colors my work contains. It's the next slide. For example, at full size, that last image, Cleveland on Parade, has 344,599. Properly printed, some like Behind the Curtain have more than 1.5 million, though shrinking the size and thus the number of pixels also cuts the number of colors. Next slide. I began this Imagiscape after my first trip to Cuba. At this stage, it already represented a meld of 3 different photographs. I thought it needed more verve. Next. Tweaking helped, but I finally decided tweaking alone wasn't enough. My image needed something more to recapture the vibrancy of what had turned on not only me, but most of the photographers in our tour group. I added something that had not been part of the original scene. In that lower right-hand corner, there are 2 Cuban boys who had been watching a stickball game in another town when I photographed them. Several shots interested me. I tried 3 and a few different ways of adding them before I settled on this iteration, which I thought was definitely better. What about trying a special effect? Not good. In fact, it looked awful, but I saw potential there. So instead of undoing that effect, I tried some adjustments. Hot wax does what it does, but other tools can enhance its positives and moderate its negatives. I love the result. Cuban Reflections is one of the Imagiscapes I've kept for myself. What I've just described is key to my process. I try hard not to close off avenues too fast. Once I launch a particular tool or effect, I'll try it across its range of options before I decide whether or not to use it on that particular Imagiscape. Because as you just saw, an effect that may look awful at some settings could be wonderful at others. If I do decide to use a tool or effect at that stage in the piece, I'll fine tune before going on, much the way an eye doctor does when he's working out a glasses prescription, making finer and finer distinctions until the difference between the options I'm considering is too small for me to see. When I get up from my chair, after I've been glued to the monitor screen for hours, I cannot believe how long I've been working, or that I've forgotten to eat. Don't worry, I make up for that in short order. The paradox is I become totally absorbed in a process that should tax the patience of someone who isn't patient by nature. And somehow it doesn't. The result of each click of my mouse is so visible, so immediate, I can hardly wait to see what my next click will do, whether I'm using a very familiar tool or taking a shot in the dark with an unfamiliar one. Whether they're working with traditional or new media, many artists start with a vision. They more or less know how they want their work to look, what they want it to say. I approach my art very differently. From start to finish, I try to take full advantage of the best gift my graphics program gives me, almost limitless freedom to experiment. This is the most forgiving medium I know, and that's wonderfully liberating. Paint with watercolor or etch a printing plate, and you are so stuck with any mistake you make. Not if you're making art with PaintShop Pro 8. I have a newer version than 8, but I use this older one because it suits my what-if approach better than later incarnations. It isn't just that the program provides me an astonishing number of highly responsive tools, and all of those tools have subsections underneath them that provide different results. I can adjust values manually using the color values or by changing the numbers, and then I preview what each of those options does and accept or reject each change. If I'm stuck, I can roll a die and react to random results until one intrigues me or offers possibilities. up here, there is a die that you can just click on and it gives you random things. And I managed to skip the, oh, you got it, okay. There's a contours tool that can make very radical changes. This last one wouldn't work as a finished image, but it might make an interesting background for something else. And again, here I am, you know, the possibilities come up and I think, well, maybe I can do something with that. Lights tool can alter even the direction light comes from, as well as how strong and what color tone it is. And okay, next one. The distortion tool offers all kinds of possibilities. I often use pinch or punch to a greater or lesser degree. Pinch makes the focal point smaller and further away, and punch makes it larger or closer. You're on the wrong slide again. Oh boy. I give up. All right. Warp is pretty interesting, but I haven't had occasion to use it yet. I have used the circle option on the geometric tools to especially good effect when I turn parade the circle photographs into circle the parade. The tools lend themselves to profoundly affecting the mood of an image. The process is most satisfying when what I create is in sync with my own mood. The most freeing thing of all, next one. The most freeing thing of all is that I can not only preview any effect before I use it to change my artwork, the program's editing tools also allow me to undo choices I've saved but come to regret, as long as I haven't closed the file yet. In practical terms, that means even an hour after I've started an image down what then feels like the wrong path, I can undo my last 10 or 20 or more changes and take the work back to where it started to go wrong. I can also, I'm sorry, unless my computer crashes, which happens occasionally. Normally, going forward or backtracking, I can also save separate versions of the work at junctures where more than one direction looks promising. So out of one beginning, I can get, you know, quite a few different imagescapes. Whoops, I'm one too far. Okay, here we go. So how do I begin to make an imagescape? That varies. I sometimes sit down at the computer with an idea or a memory or a feeling I'm in the mood to explore. In this one, the idea is connections. And that's the title of this imagescape, which brings together disparate moments and memories. The large faint head echoes a drawing that hung in my childhood home and now hangs in mine. It doesn't look that much like me, and my mother would never have let me wear earrings at that age. But my brothers and I mistakenly thought it was a drawing of me. The most significant thing about that connection is that we were wrong about its nature. The drawing was a wedding gift to my parents from the artist, who was loosely connected to our family by marriage, but that hardly mattered. Next one. More importantly, and hence more prominent in the image, the central figures harken back to a special gift my father gave me, a collectible edition of Camera Works, which contains artist Edward Steichen's Mother and Child in Sunlight. That soft-covered volume had been a gift to my dad from Steichen's adult daughter, Mary, the child, in this black and white photogravure that I've appropriated here. Elements of the background in my connections artwork, I'm sorry, are drawn from our photographs at two international art expositions, Expo 67 in Montreal and the 1997 Venice Biennale 30 years later. Expo was the first international exposition my late husband Fred and I went to, and it was also where I saw a collection of Steichen's work for the first time. The Biennale was the last exhibition Fred and I went to before he died. Looking at this montage evokes nostalgia in me. It won't have the same resonances for you, obviously, but I hope you'll find your own points of connection with it. Often I approach my blank screen with no agenda at all, and sometimes with no slides at all. Where are we? Here we go. Okay. I start then by browsing my computer files till some possible source images get my creative juices flowing. This is a good one. I like that photo just the way it is, but I recognized it would be more useful cropped because it immediately called to mind others with promising contrasts. That young boy in Xi'an, enthralled by technology, could be put together with two old men I photographed conversing in Shanghai. I cloned the boy's face onto the camera screen to give him even more reason to smile, and then I added a photo of Beijing's historic summer palace and a Beijing nature photo to contrast with the modern technology. Put together and heavily manipulated, 4 photographs emerged as Old World, New World. This signature piece for my solo exhibition at the Fairmont Center for the Arts sold at the opening. It was an exciting show to do. They invited me after I'd won back-to-back first prizes in their annual juried shows, and they gave me the entirety of the center's substantial gallery space, both the main floor and upstairs. It's a great venue. Sometimes what draws me in are unexpected affinities, like the scene I shot in Japan, and a banner I photographed at the Cleveland Museum of Art's Parade the Circle. As with most Imagiscapes, a lot of alterations and a few other images went into creating Everywhere I Go. One of those images accounts for the picture's title. I incorporated a picture of my husband, who had always wanted to see Japan, but had died before we got there together. Unfortunately, I camouflaged that edition so well that I can't find him anymore. Fortunately, the person who bought that piece won't care that Fred is not findable. Some paintings or groupings have appeal because they begin a story for me. Excuse me. 2 seconds. In the case of Everywhere I Go, the Imagiscape is fine, but the story doesn't work as well as I'd hoped. This iteration, Somewhere I Have Never Traveled, number 9, does tell the story I had in mind. Fred is visible, but ethereal. And the signs over on the left show that he is waiting for a train to or in Japan. Artist block isn't all that different from writer's block. When ideas don't come spontaneously, I'll fall back on my what if process and try combinations more or less at random. I can go through a lot of combinations some days before I hit on one that grabs me, but some days nothing does. Other days go better. Exciting work has started with a trial that's not an error. East Side, West Side is one of the best of my early urban pieces. I'd planned to enter it in a juried show, but Glidden-Haas bought it before I got the chance to do that. I still own the other urban piece I started that day using the same what-if process. Behind From Where We Came uses 3 altered photos of downtown Cleveland, plus a clone of part of another one, what you see in the rearview mirror. That Imagiscape took first prize in the 2008 Fairmont Center show, which draws a lot of talented photographers and printmakers among its entrants. I've amassed a huge cache of photos to consider as I look for source material to use in my artwork. Since I abandoned my film camera in favor of digital ones, my stock of images has burgeoned. My first trip to Asia must have set some kind of record. I took over 6,000 photographs. But even before that, when I was using traditional film, I tended to photograph a lot on my travels. I always felt that focusing through a viewfinder helped me see things I might not have noticed otherwise. I've turned other things that have meaning for me into source materials too. If I don't love what computers do for Polaroid transfer prints, I often like what transfers do for my Imagiscapes. They add a special texture. Then If Ever Come Perfect Days is another image in which I combined a very visible altered transfer of Fred with scenes of places he didn't live to see. And sometimes with soul-soothing places that we went to together. Polaroid and motion transfers give work a different character. Here's one I made in San Miguel, Mexico several years ago, and San Miguel Memory, my digitally altered version. Now, yes, I can't get the mouse to move. Wait a minute. Here we are. Once when I was about 14, I tried my hand at my dad's hobby, painting in oils. We painted side by side on a vacation in the Berkshires. Warm memory, inept painting, but I've kept it because of the emotional pull of its connection to my father, who loved art. The painting was too large to fit the flatbed of my scanner, but I scanned it in sections and stitched them together digitally so I could retain the texture that photographing the painting would lose. I could have used an effects tool to simulate brush strokes. PaintShop Pro gave me nuanced options that might have passed muster, but I liked the real thing, the tracks of my brush and palette knife. The digital version of my painting turns up in Imagiscapes the way much of my source material does, greatly altered, but adding to the whole in subtle ways. Portrait of the Artist, which was accepted into the prestigious 2007 six-state photography show at Fava Gallery in Oberlin, began with a snapshot from the black and white series my husband took while my portrait was being painted. Where's the, oh, there it is. While my portrait was being painted as a gift from my father for our first anniversary. The background of the finished Imagiscape includes that altered painting that I did in my teens. And it also includes a bit of my pottery and indications that I use a camera and other samples of other media like glass that I've tried. So it's a portrait of the artist in a double sense. Whoops, next one. As portrait and other examples make clear, I have sometimes scanned, altered, and incorporated photographs I didn't take. I have no hesitation about appropriating art or artifacts someone else produced, but I have rules about when appropriating is appropriate. More than just visually appealing or useful, the works or the artists who made them must connect to me in a personal way, and I must substantially alter or build on the borrowed material. My intent is homage rather than theft. My husband's award-winning canal step is one almost hidden element in my balanced rock. It's behind the figures on the rock. His award-winning palm tree dreams is essential to my wind and water. I've scanned, cropped, colored, and manipulated a black and white photograph my daughter Amy shot in Latin America and printed in our darkroom. It provides background and texture for several of my award-winning photographs. In Creel Street 2, Amy's Latin Market offers background subtleties. In Deepened Dreams and Toward Gardens of the Dawn, one figure in it, mirrored and altered, functions as the focal point of the image against the background of a New York haunt of my childhood, Fort Tryon Park. I scanned the fabric that graced my bedroom windows to make On the Road 3 an evocation of home and away. It was harder to figure out how to scan solidly three-dimensional objects. But I had some I wanted to use in Imagiscapes, and I didn't think photographing them would give me what I wanted. Or maybe I was just intrigued by the challenge. If I couldn't close my scanner lid, how could I block the ambient light enough to get a decent image? The solution turned out to be pretty simple. I laid the object down on the scanner bed and draped both the scanner and the object with a large, thick bath towel. The porcelain vase I threw and carved back in the 70s when I was a potter is an important source image for the Imagiscape I call Tranquility Cool. The carved mountains in the vase are clearly visible in the montage. You have to look closely to discern the outline of the vase, which is there as well. I could have extracted and used just the mountains, but the act of working clay and creating with it was tranquility for me. Sometimes my purposes were better served by turning the three-dimensional object and making additional scans that I could stitch together or clone into a montage. That was the case with this hand-built vase, a gift to me from the artist's longtime friend, Ann K. Wood Brown. Backed by a pixel-painted sky and surrounded by elements from Ann's vase, the hare, Barry Flanagan's Thinker on a Rock in the National Gallery Sculpture Garden, sits atop the tortoise, anticipating his triumph, or as I titled this, Counting Chickens. So once I choose 2 or more images to work with, what then? I can combine images in a variety of ways. Many graphic software users put bits of images together using the Layers tool. Treating each element in the composition as a separate layer gives the artist maximum control over exactly where each element is placed and how it appears. I sometimes use that technique too, as I did with the locket in the Remembrance of Things Past. But I rarely use it till my montage is well along. Art, like life, happens. I like the chance to be less controlling as long as I can. What my program calls arithmetic is the combining tool I prefer. It lets me meld 2 images of any size, and by extension, an infinite number of other single or combined images, 1 pair at a time, into a new image. Again, I have options to choose among, 10 of them in fact, and variations within those 10. And each gives a very different result. Averaging tends to be the most useful for the work I'm doing. But what makes arithmetic my tool of choice is how it treats size and proportion. I designate which image is primary, and as the combining takes place, image 2 is resized and reproportioned, so it exactly matches the dimensions of image 1. So what's so great about that? What's so great about that, in a way, it's at the heart of my work. When the proportions of the images differ, this process introduces an automatic distortion of reality. I see it as a metaphor for what the human mind does with experience, and I think it makes the work more interesting. Once I combine my first pair or group of images, the painstaking work of tweaking begins. Is the balance aesthetically pleasing? Are important elements clear or prominent enough? Are some too strident? I often recombine a few times, sometimes using more than one arithmetic method, to achieve a balance between the images that satisfies me. Red Umbrellas provides examples of the kinds of intricate changes that might go into producing an Imagiscape. I first combined 2 photos I shot in Tokyo, an ordinary residential street reflected in a traffic mirror on a rainy day, and a sunny view of modern high-rise office buildings in Tokyo. When it occurred to me to combine them with a photograph of an antique Japanese print my brother Robert owns, I chose to reverse the direction of the image so the ancient and present day buildings would dovetail well, and the ancient and modern figures would diverge, heading in a more appropriate direction. That accomplished, the Japanese characters on the sign were now backward. I needed to fix that. I painted out the incorrect characters by covering them with clones from the adjacent pixels, so the background for the letters looked bright, and then I painted in the correct characters, cloning them from the original photo. Making changes to selected areas of an image is often necessary and almost always painstaking, complicated, and time-consuming. Here's how I handled a major color change in Red Umbrellas, morphing the black umbrella into a red one to draw the images together visually. I drew an outline around the black umbrella with my selection tools. Until I deselected that area, anything I did would affect only the pixels inside that outline. I used the eyedropper tool to choose among the infinite variety of reds in the materials palette. The existing black of the umbrella would alter how the red would look unless the application was 100% opaque. The application couldn't be completely opaque if I wanted to retain the subtle tonal difference between the inside and the outside of the umbrella. I tried a half dozen variations before I hit on the right red, which was more vibrant than the antique Prince subdued umbrella. And then I used a flood fill tool to recolor the area and adjusted the transparency of the fill color by trial and error until I got the effect I wanted. Next slide. I also decided to substitute the face of Izumi, the friend of a friend I had spent an afternoon with in Japan, for the anonymous face under the umbrella, particularizing it that way. Where's the, there it is. Particularizing it in that way made it a more personal imagiscape. I chose my elliptical selection tool to outline Izumi's face in a shot I had taken of her that day. I copied, rotated, and resized it several times until it would fit on the body and under the umbrella in my montage. And then I pasted it onto a new blank layer so I could move it around to get the position just right. That's a trick I use frequently. During the 5 months this image was in progress, it underwent much incremental adjusting of line and color. The resulting red umbrellas #3 took first prize in the digital imaging category in the annual juried exhibition of the Fairmont Center for the Arts. I gave it to my brother and my new sister-in-law as a wedding present when they married that summer. Sometimes creating a new image involves reinventing an older one I liked in its original incarnation. As I considered this photograph of the Suzhou Canal on the right, I got the idea to pair it with For Jeremy and Yvette, a work I'd made as a wedding gift for friends who now live in the Yukon. My initial point of connection was its Chinese screen-like feel and the echoing shapes of the mountain and the bridge. A happy accident occurred when I brought the two images together. Check out the mail as soon as you can see it. Again, thank you. Check out the, wait a minute while I collapse. I'll be back in a minute. A happy accident occurred when I brought the two images together. Check out the male bird on Jeremy and Yvette's present, and now check him out in my new combination. It's a subtle difference that changes the narrative. I barely had a chance to enjoy Worlds Away. Finished a couple of weeks before the Fairmont show opened. It apparently spoke to a couple who came to the reception, and it went home with them when the show came down. I'm going to take a break for a second. Next one. The method I use infuses my imagiscapes with intricacies and relationships I often did not contemplate at the outset. The way my late friend, the painter Randall Tieneman, explained his own process is true of mine as well. The work is revealed to me in the creation. Still, my work is filled with ideas as well as emotional expression, and that's inevitable because it's my work and it reflects what I think about as well as what I feel. I see myself as observer, recorder, interpreter. I'm acutely aware of how those roles, and indeed just carrying the camera, focuses and at the same time distances me from my own experience. On a philosophical level, I'm interested in harmonizing multiple points of view and in the nature of reality and in the unreliability of memory. Can you trust what you see? How real is what you recall? Even if we're looking at the same thing, is what we each see the same? That question occurred to me after I took an art workshop in Provence weeks before my cataract surgery. Not just the work I had done there, but even the blue of my own eyes looked different to me when the cataracts were gone. The vantage point in this montage is Cleveland's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The scene is replete with genuine Cleveland landmarks, but it is an imaginary construct, a kind of altered reality, This is not a view you could ever see from that or any other vantage. My art is grounded in the notion that objective reality, if it exists at all, is far less powerful than the reality people experience, and that kind of reality is subjective and mutable. What I see and how I interpret it depends on many things: where I stand, whether I'm still or in motion, my mood at the moment, my memories, and what connections my brain makes between them and what I see or hear or read. Given people's increasing ability to deliberately alter what passes for objective reality, I think that proposition has implications beyond the fallibility of memory. And I also think the computer is especially well suited to reflect those issues. Okay, that's my fault. Okay. From a less philosophical standpoint, I'm interested in how the viewer, artistic or not, completes any work of art by what he or she brings to it. My work is full of ambiguities meant to invite your imagination. I love hearing from people about what the work says to them. So with that in mind, let me spend a few minutes introducing you to a bit more of my work, and then I'll be happy to take your comments and answer your questions. I rarely accept commissions, but when I was one of 10 artists chosen to participate in the Art of Space project, it was too tempting to turn down. Each of us received a stipend plus free framing for the art, plus a share of the proceeds. Our challenge was to create a 24 by 24 inch work interpreting a Cleveland landmark in the light of some attribute. I chose Case Reserve's Gary designed building and illumination. The 10 pieces that the artist submitted were exhibited at Ingenuity Fest and then moved to a storefront at Shaker Square and sold at auction. The artist and three nonprofit arts organizations split the proceeds. I enjoyed making illuminations so much, I followed it with a series of Gary building montages, and these are two from the series. And then putting together the slideshow last month inspired two more variations. The Art of Space project also sparked my renewed interest in the urban landscape. You need to click, I think. Cheryl, there we go. Here are 4 downtown Cleveland imagescapes that inspired. About that time, I also produced some I also produced some altered Cleveland photographs that I thought stood on their own, as in this one at Playhouse Square. Or this one, Heading Downtown, which is one of 2 of my altered Cleveland photographs that Cleveland State University owns. I have a lot of urban landscapes in New York, London, Havana, and Tokyo. Click. That I like but have not montaged. Maybe the mood or a fresh idea I'm dying to pursue will strike me one of these days. Here is my most message-driven imagescape, which I created this year for the new book I'm working on. And speaking of books, I could undoubtedly go on for another hour, at least, but enough is enough. If I've whetted your appetite for more, you could check out my book, Accidental Artist, which is available on Amazon, or a signed copy could be available through Kendal at home. And I will be happy to take your questions in just one more second. You're going to do it, right? You're doing the slideshow or not?
Would you like me to start it?
Yeah. While we do the question and answers.
Hi, Sheila. I'm just here to keep an eye on the chat box and the Q&A for you, so you don't have to
Okay.
worry about trying to pull that up.
No, I'm not.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm starting to see the little red bubbles telling
That's
us,
the wrong-
oh, we've got comments, beautiful work. I have a hand raised.
Yeah, no.
Do you
No,
want to leave out?
yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, right. It's doing its own.
You too, my friend.
Okay, here I am. I'm back.
We have some folks raising their hand, and I'm not, if they would like to talk, I'm asking them if they want to unmute. Monica, I'm not sure if you're there.
Yeah, we're here.
We're here.
Hi, Frank and Monica.
It was wonderful, really, really good.
First of all, I've been fascinated with your work since I saw it a couple months ago when I was in the office.
Ah,
A couple of questions.
sure.
Do you find that when you create it on the computer and then go to print it,
Yeah.
that the colors are not what you thought they were?
Well, that used not to be true, but it's certainly true now because the printer that I used to make most of the images was broken 5 years ago when I moved. And I have not replaced it with an equally good one. But what I did and what I still do now, if I'm going to print it, is I do test prints. And then I adjust the image until I get it to print the way I want it to print.
Well, how big a piece can you put out then?
Well, not as big as I used to. I used to be able to do something that was 11 by 7, that was 17 by 24. But I can also stitch things together. I have one, for example, that was too big even for that, and it's done in 2 parts, and then they're just mounted so that the division between them is not very visible.
Uh-huh. Well, I find your work very fascinating.
Thank you.
Also,
Me too.
Me too.
Who's that?
Judy, I think
Judy
that was
Kramer.
Judy.
Oh, hi there.
Judy, did you want to talk? I did unmute you if you wanted to talk.
Who?
Judy Kramer?
Yeah.
So talk, unmute your microphone and talk.
Judy, I'm gonna move on, but I will come back to you if we can get you on. I have a question for you, Sheila. I believe
Sure.
It's either Jana or Jana. Maybe you know this.
Jana.
person. Okay.
She's in
She's
New Mexico.
asking, and I apologize for if I didn't get your name right there, but is asking, is there an optimal size for printing your work?
No, not necessarily. Most of them are the resolution is high enough that it can be printed fairly large. But the problem now is that again, I'm limited in the size I can print. So 8 by 10 or 11 by 14 is probably the most I do now.
Excellent. Barbara, I saw your hand up and I did unmute you if you wanted to share a comment or ask a question.
How come you can see the audience and I can't?
I
Right.
can't see them. I can see their names down below on the participant.
Oh, okay. So it's a virtual hand that you're seeing. Okay.
Oh, yes, correct. I'm sorry. I should have been more clear.
Okay.
David, I have unmuted you. I saw that you had raised your hand. Is there something you wanted to share?
Sure, I just want to say that Sheila's my sister and she did a wonderful job. I was really impressed. And I've known her a very long time.
Yeah, right. Even if you still don't spell my name right.
It's true.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for joining us.
My
Bob,
favorite.
I'm gonna ask you to unmute. I saw your hand up. There we go. Bob,
You know,
can you-
I
Sheila,
know who that is before.
what
you
Sheila
know
didn't
it's out.
mention is, yeah, she has identical twin brothers.
I said I had terrific brothers.
Yeah, I
Doesn't
know,
that-
no,
doesn't
absolutely.
that work?
No, I was just gonna say, so I couldn't let David's comment pass with saying, I'm the older one, so I know Sheila longer than David.
It will.
But yeah, I thought it was a terrific show, Sheila. I mean, obviously, we've seen some of the images before, but
And
I
you
never
own some
understood a
of
lot.
them.
Yes, absolutely. I've never understood a lot of the complexity, but I really enjoyed your presentation. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You may even
I'm glad
invite you
you
for
came.
Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Now, Sheila, have you seen your brothers through this last year and a half?
Yes, yes.
Good. Good, good.
And I'm going to get to see one of them at least next week or whenever Thanksgiving is. I've lost track of time.
Oh, how wonderful. I think this is going to be a year that we will appreciate. We'll be thankful for Thanksgiving more than we have in a long time.
Absolutely. Did Becky Thomas have her hand up? Because I thought I saw that come across the,
I have given her the opportunity to unmute if she
Okay.
would like to.
Sheila, I didn't have my hand up. I've written you a couple of chats, a couple of,
oh, okay.
of
Lindsay, have you got the chance?
laudatory comments for you. And then I was also asking if Hanging On has been sold, or is it one of your personal favorites that you
One of my
keep?
personal ones.
Okay, darn. Okay.
Hey, David.
Okay.
I'm going to mute those of you that have had a chance to
Oh, my
share. If you
goodness.
don't mind muting yourself, we're getting a little bit of feedback. Okay, Marilyn Brooks, you are up next. There we go. I've unmuted you, Marilyn.
Okay. I'm Ann Adamson. Marilyn and I are delighted to have Sheila as our neighbor and very impressed with the presentation.
Thank you. If
You
we
all live
practiced
in a
it 10 more
wonderful
times
building over
with
there.
the iteration we have this time, it would have worked better, but it's okay.
Sheila,
You
there
have
is
no
a nice
idea how
community of
complicated
people in
this
that
is if you've
building.
never done it. Thank you,
Sheila, you're
Jen.
getting lots of love in the Q&A. Rosalind says your presentation was excellent and complex and warrants re-experiencing. Can a recording be heard and viewed from Roz?
What a
Yes,
good question.
Kendall at Home will make that available. It is on Facebook. We were streaming on Facebook this whole session, but we will also have it. You can link to it from our website.
And the website. Okay.
Let's see if we have anything else down here in the Q&A that I haven't gotten to. Jean Miller says, what a fascinating presentation. And
Thank you,
Marla,
Jean.
our very own Marla from Kendal says, beautiful work.
Thank you.
I just love the presentation.
There's Judy. That was Judy. I think she said.
Yes,
she
I
just wanted-
recognize the voice. I hope you're
I
doing
love
well,
the
Judy.
presentation.
Thank you, Michelle. Just got very quiet.
It did get quiet. I think I wanted to make sure we weren't talking over anyone. Monica
Oh.
and Frank, your hand is back up. So I don't know if that was, it looks like you just put it back up. So if you wanted to unmute, go ahead.
I was curious, Sheila, I know you have, your apartment is beautiful and have beautiful artwork there. If someone wants to buy something, some of your artwork,
Yes.
what should they do? They should contact you and then what?
Yeah, they can contact me and then they can come and look. My website is now defunct as of this morning.
Oh,
It's long and complicated story. The domain name lapsed because they sent the email for the renewal to the wrong email. So then I got a new domain name and it has propagated, but meanwhile, the web host has changed its payments provider. And the payment process has become so complicated that I finally gave up in despair. So,
oh. I too,
So
how much I love hanging on. I figured, I said, oh, let's buy that one. Although
Well, I
yeah.
might play around with some variations on that. They're all individual, but if I come up with a variation that I like, I'll let you know. And
Yeah,
Becky
but-
also.
Other ones too, yeah, they're beautiful. It was very excellent presentation.
Thank
And
you.
I still don't know how you do it, but
It's a fascinating, it's a fascinating art form. I am just intrigued by it.
Yeah, it's the funny thing is that in a way, it's the way I do it anyhow, it's close to the pottery because the piece evolves as I go and I can stop and think about it and then, work some more. I tried glass and that is so not my medium because the hot glass, keeps moving while you're thinking and that doesn't work.
Well, I think it's.
Sheila, I have to imagine, what is your relation to Teresa Markowitz?
Cousin.
Cousin, wonderful. Well, she is curious. She thought your presentation was fascinating and educational. Have you ever given this presentation to other groups, like art schools?
No, I haven't. Like 12 years ago, maybe I talked to a couple of arts organizations, but it was a somewhat different speech. Actually, the talk I gave is based really on the, whoops, wait a minute. I'm glad you came for the entire presentation. That's my daughter
oh,
who happens to be at home because she's not well,
right.
but she's improving. Where was I? I just lost my train of thought entirely. Oh, the book has essentially a version of the talk in it. The talk is an expansion of what's in the book, but much of that material is covered in Accidental Artist.
Sheila, I think Beverly is on.
Hello, Beverly.
Hello, Sheila. I
Hi.
have watched you for years doing
Yes, you have.
wonderful pictures from the very beginning. And I have to say, I was fascinated how much I still learned and am amazed at your ability to be so creative. It's the part of you that I love, but I'm still really fascinated. It's a wonderful presentation. You did a fabulous job.
Thank you very much. And Cheryl, I could not have done it alone today because the technology was about to defeat me.
Well, I appreciate seeing it, and I'll see you soon.
Yes, you will. I could bring dessert.
Hello, I'm Cheryl behind the scenes here with Sheila. I want to thank everyone for your patience. Being next to Sheila while she presented this was just wonderful to hear about her work, and thank you for hanging with us in the beginning there when we had some difficulties. So glad you all enjoyed it. It's lovely every time to see Sheila and to see the work in her home. I thoroughly enjoy it, and hearing about it even more, Sheila, is
Thank you.
just wonderful and very enjoyable.
Good.
Sheila, I think I finally, for the first time, maybe understand a little bit of what you do. I remember when I first met you, kind of politely nodding. Picked up on that. I was just being polite. I didn't really understand how you do this, but I really think I got some of it today. It's
when I
amazing.
started, I didn't really understand it either. And that's part of what makes it so interesting to me is the fact that there's so much discovery involved. Because there are so many, like with the clay, there are so many different ways to go and so many different approaches, and nobody does it quite the way I do.
It's really, really amazing. This was such a wonderful opportunity. And really and truly, you are one of our most highly attended sessions. So
Aha.
yes. take that.
How
and
many
feel
people
good
did we
about it.
have?
I think probably just a couple of people have had to get off, but we had upwards of 40 people on with us today, which is
Holy smoke, wow.
fantastic. Really
That's
fantastic.
impressive. Yeah, okay.
I am going to share for the group, if you don't mind. I'm gonna steal the spotlight just for a split second here. I want to share, since we've got so many people on today, they might want to come to some other things
Sure.
we have coming up. So hopefully, Sheila, do you see a slide talking about some of our upcoming events?
I do, not on my, I see it on my iPad. And I see
Perfect.
it on
Okay, then
Cheryl's,
our guests are
not
seeing it
on
as
mine.
well.
Yeah.
Some really awesome things coming up. Thanks to the Greater Boston Food Bank for joining us in December, and how you can support your local community. And then Tuesday, November 30th, myself and my colleague David in Massachusetts, we're going to be hosting a seminar that evening. We know a lot of times people talk about these types of topics, things like Kendal at home and planning for the future when they're together for the holidays. So we're going to host a seminar, and we would love to have people who want to have their friends and family learn a little bit more about Kendal at home log on that evening. We know there's still a lot of folks who want to learn but are working. So we thought it'd be nice to host a 6 o'clock for everyone. So that's all. I'm not going to steal any more of this show.
That's all right. We're already 7 minutes over.
That's all right. People were enjoying it.
Okay. So the 4 people the 3 people whose names were, there are lots of people across the screen. What is that? They're in the chat room, or?
Those are all the attendees that are still with us. Like I said, I think probably some have hopped off because likely they had engagements at noon.
For sure.
But this is where we will start to wrap it up here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sheila, so much.
You're
I don't
more
know
than
how long we
welcome.
get to have your art in the office, but anyone who would like to come see it, you absolutely can. We can find a time. And as Sheila said, if you're interested in ordering a book and maybe you can't find it on Amazon, we are more than happy to help facilitate that at Kendal at Home.
If they want to order it through you, I can order it, and then I save them the shipping cost.
Perfect. Perfect. So just
And I-
contact us and we'll.
Kendall.
There's Lynn. Hi, Lynn.
Hi. Sheila, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank
You're
you.
more than welcome.
It was wonderful. It was
And
great.
thank you for your help.
You're
did-
welcome.
David, are you, he is still there.
Yeah.
Did you want to see your brother's face? I could upgrade him, David.
Sure.
David, I'm going to send you an upgrade to be a panelist.
Oh, okay.
And then you can put
Actually,
your
he's
camera
a
on.
very fine photographer.
So I can start the video. Okay. Hi, Sheila.
Hi there.
Good to see you.
I
It's the
don't
first time I've seen you with silver hair.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
There you are.
Looks good.
Thank you.
David, where do you live?
New York.
He's in New York. And the other one's in Washington.
Yes.
I would bring him up too, but I think the other one is,
I think he may have just left. He may have
I
left.
think he
He's
popped
got a
off.
shorter attention span. Or maybe something to do, I don't know.
Which brother will you see for Thanksgiving, Sheila?
The other one.
The other one.
The other one. Okay, well, good. Then I'm glad you're
Because
seeing
I'm
each
going to
other today.
Washington and he's in New York.
I don't get to Cleveland very often.
Oh, you certainly don't. I don't
There's
know.
still
He
public
he
forum.
travels a lot.
Yeah, we just got back from France and Italy, as a matter of fact. We're there for 6 weeks. Yeah. It's
Oh,
wonderful.
wow.
It was so nice to be able to travel again. It was absolutely terrific.
I was gonna ask, how did it feel? Was it comfortable or people?
Truthfully, what happened was I felt like, in Dante's Inferno of Hell, when he comes out from the underworld and he sees the stars, that's the way I felt. I keep on having that visual image. I mean, it was just, it really was, it was so nice to be out. It was so nice to see some of our friends in Europe. They came to meet us in different places, and it was just,